हेलो and a very warm welcome back to my channel. आप लोग काफ़ी बार पूछते हैं कि मैं रस्किन बॉन्ड से मिली हूँ कि नहीं, तो नो, आई हैव नॉट हैड द प्लेजर ऑफ मीटिंग मिस्टर रस्किन बॉन्ड. पर उनकी एक किताब है जो मुझे यहाँ पे घर पे मिली एंड इट इज़ साइंड बाय हिम. दिस इट्स फॉर माय फादर इन लॉ दैट ही हैड गिवन, सो आई डिसाइडेड टू रीड इट एंड इट्स गॉट वंडरफुल टेल्स ऑफ मसूरी. तो मैंने सोचा क्यों ना आई रीड at least a couple of pages for you, just to make you understand what Mussoorie was like, a little bit of history, some tales from the old times in Mussoorie. So yes, if I don't know if you can see it clearly, he has addressed it to my father-in-law, Mr. Tom Walter, and on this trip I decided to read this book and fascinated by the life here. So I'm going to read from a chapter which is called Tales of a Hill Station. Okay. Visitors to Mussoorie frequently find themselves persuaded to take the ropeway to the top of a local peak called Gun Hill, from where they are able to enjoy a view of both the plains and the greater Himalayas. They will also see the Mussoorie waterworks, but of a gun there is no sign, and they may be pardoned for wondering how the hill acquired its impressive name. Before 1919, the Mussoorie public used to be told the time at noon by the firing of a gun from the peak known as Gun Hill. Perhaps guns were cheaper than clocks in those days. I cannot think of any other sound reason for the system. It was not very popular with the local residents. At first, the gun faced east, but soon after its installation, shortly after 1857, Miss Bryan of Grey Castle Nursing Home and then Miss Hamilton of the same institution complained that when the gun was fired, it often loosed plaster from the ceiling of the wards, which fell on the patient's bed and unnerved them. It could not be pointed north, because it would have blasted away Mr. Yerburgh's house, Dilkusha. So it was faced northeast, and almost immediately came a complaint from Crystalbank. Turned to the south, it almost succeeded in fulfilling its legitimate duty. The gunner forgot to remove the ramrod from the barrel. And on booming noon, to the populace, the cannon sent the ramrod clean through the roof of Stella Cottage. Public opinion was now mounting against the gun, and it was turned around once more to face the mall. Its boom was usually produced by ramming a mixture of moist grass and cotton waste down the barrel after the powder was in place. Due to an accidental overcharge of powder, one of these cannonballs landed with some force on the lap of a lady who was being taken by a dandy down to the plains. It was the last straw, or to be exact, the last straw cannonball, for the gun was dismantled soon after this incident. A peep into the life of a hill station before the turn of the century provides us with much interesting matter on European social life during that period. But before giving the reader further anecdotes, I should fill in the background with a brief historical sketch of Masuri. In the year 1825, the superintendent of the Doon was a certain Mr. F.J. Shore, who found time from his official duties to scramble up to the hills then known as Mussoorie because of the prevalence of a shrub known in the vernacular as the Mansoor plant. And as you can see, we have been stopped by a certain Kaden Veer Orter who's just finished his classes. And he needs something because I've got him something from...
Is it chocolate dairy?
Where was I? Hayden just finished his school, his online classes, and decided to come here. So we were talking about the gun. In the year 1825, the superintendent of the Doon was a certain Mr. F. J. Shore, who found time from his official duties to scramble up to the hills then known as Mussoorie because of the prevalence of a shrub known in the vernacular as the Mansoor plant. He found that these hills had a number of flat areas, some of which accommodated the huts of cowherds who grazed their cattle on them during the summer months. Game was then plentiful in the hills, and the first construction was a shooting box built jointly by Mr. Shaw and Captain Young of the Sirmur Rifles. The first home, still recognizable, was Mullingar on Landour Hill, built in 1826 by Captain Young. Soon, Landour became a convalescent depot for British troops, and settlers began flocking to Mussoorie, building houses as far apart as Cloud End in the west and Dahlia Bank in the east, separated by a distance of some 12 miles. In 1832, Colonel Everest, after whom the mountain is named, as Surveyor General, opened his Survey of India office in the park and made a road to it. Masuri is the original home of the department. People came to Mussoorie for both business and pleasure, and amongst the pleasure seekers we find the Honourable Emily Eden, sister of Lord George Eden, Earl of Auckland, Governor General of India. In her journals she records that in the afternoon we took a beautiful ride up to Landour, but the paths are much narrower on that side, and our courage somehow oozed out. And first we came to a place where they said this was where poor Major Blundell and his pony fell over, and they were both dashed to atoms. And then there was a board stuck in a tree. From this spot, a private in the Cameroons fell and was killed. We had to get off our ponies and lead them, and altogether I thought much of poor Blundell, but it's impossible to imagine more beautiful scenery. Fascinating stuff. So, that was the book I was reading. You will find these books at Mr. Anil Prakash's shop in Sisters Bazaar. The cover is changed now. This is a much older one, like I said. This was gifted by Mr. Ruskin Bond himself to my father-in-law, Tom Walter. And I haven't had the chance, like I said, to meet Ruskin Bond, but I have met Ganesh Saili, who is the co-author of the book, on several occasions, and he always has the most interesting anecdotes to tell us about Mussoorie and the hillside. So hope you enjoyed this reading session. There were a bit of breaks because, there were some cars that came in, there were some guests who had come. But that's it for today. Goodbye.